Woo! Hello, everyone. Welcome to Subtle Asian Book Club. This is the month of July, and our July book club pick was Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. We're so lucky to have him here with us today. Woo! I read the audiobooks. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me, but it's
I have a ton of extra copies lying around.
It was a fantastic read. A lot of us loved it. A lot of us were crying, enjoying it. You can check out our Discord just for all the fangirlingness. And luckily, there's also a sequel in the works, but we are not there yet. But before we get started for today's live, a couple introductions. I'm Tiffany, one of the co-hosts of Subtle Asian Book Club.
I'm Alexandra, also another co-host of Subtle Asian Book Club, and I'm really, really excited to have our special guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself? And as a quick icebreaker, do you want to share an activity that's on your summer bucket list, even though we know summer is almost ending?
Sure, I'm Adib Khorram. I use he and him pronouns. And boy, summer bucket list. I really would like to make it to the pool at some point. I still really haven't gone to the pool at all. Because of the pandemic, and I don't want anyone breathing on me. But at the same time, any summer where you don't get the pool at least once feels kind of sad. I don't know. I'll have to figure out a time when like no one else is around and breathing on me. And I am fully vaccinated, so I'm not that worried. I'm just a little worried.
Yeah. Very valid. Are you more of like a pool/water type of person than like mountains and camping type of person?
Oh, I definitely hate camping. I love the mountains, and I really love like hiking on a really nice, like well-made path in there, where it's, you know, paved and there's like handrails and stuff. That's great. But like rugged off the path hiking, no. Camping, definitely not. I hate bugs too much. So in that sense, yes, I am a pool, like sit by the pool, drink something cool, maybe get wet every once in a while. That's definitely my vibe. Even better if you can like be in a pool and then look and see the mountains.
Got it.
Right.
So let's jump into our questions. Wait, Sam, were you gonna say something?
No. But I wanted to give a quick disclaimer to everyone who is watching. We will be diving into spoilers, so feel free. We are going to talk in depth about this book, Darius the Great is Not Okay. If you haven't read it yet, be sure to just come back later and watch when you're done with the book. And yeah, that is it.
Yes, we'll always be here for you. And you can always talk with the community about it. Even if you read it like next month, a couple months from now, we're here for you. So moving into the first question, what has been your favorite part about writing Darius the Great? Do you have any favorite moments, quotes, or scenes?
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes is a fairly short one that happens toward the end of the book where Darius and his mom are sitting together, like walking through or looking through a photo album. And I'm still really proud of that scene. I feel like I managed to do a bunch of things all at once without ever actually saying them. I felt like I really nailed subtext. And that was where I was like, yes, I am a good writer and I wrote this good scene. I also just really love how many like Star Trek references I was able to cram in there, and like no one stopped me. So that was really fun. And I really enjoyed getting to spend time in Darius's head. He's a really interesting character to spend time with, and really well put together in a way that I was not at age 15, 16. And it kind of makes me wish that I had known someone like him, like in real life, because my teenage years were really rough in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I thought he was such a relatable character. I really loved him. And then speaking of the Star Trek references, I've never watched Star Trek. I don't know much about it, but I know
it's okay. It's totally fine.
But it made me, I was like, maybe I should give this a try.
If you do, you're probably going to hate like the first 2 seasons of Star Trek Next Generation. Most people do, because there's like 5 good episodes and 50 bad ones. But by the time they like hit the 3rd season and then the 4th season, it starts getting really good. And you're like, oh, okay, it's worth sticking it out, or just fast forwarding.
Do you have a stance?
Sorry,
do you have a stance? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, do you have a stance on the whole Star Trek versus Star Wars debate?
I do have a stance, but I never say it over the internet because the trolls are everywhere.
Very fair. Very valid.
Right. A while back, I read like a long, like in-depth article about how if you go and like watch Star Wars videos on YouTube, within like 3 or 4 clicks, you're going to be like deep in the alt-right. And I was like, oh, this is alarming. And so far, I haven't seen an equivalent thing for Star Trek, but maybe it's out there. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the internet can be a little dangerous.
Truly. And yet also wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. I thought it was really cool how you were able to tie in like very niche Star Trek type of energy along with like Darius and his relationship with his dad. So it's like fun Star Trek type of stuff, and then Paul's also like more like in-depth like relationships and whatnot, which I feel like we will definitely talk about later, Darius and his relationship with his dad. But yeah, it was very cool.
Thank you. It's funny, like a lot of the Star Trek came from, as I was writing, I had this moment of like existential dread where I was doing a little math on like how old all the characters were. And I was like, oh, I'm like closer to parent age than I am to Darius age. And I had to like lay on the floor for a while as like my mortality hit me. Because I was like, oh my God, I'm in my 30s. Teenage years were in fact quite a while away now. And then I was like, well, what would I be like if I was a parent? I would probably make my kids watch Star Trek with me. And that's actually where like Darius and his dad watching Star Trek together came from. I was like, well, yes, I would make my kids watch Star Trek. So that's what Darius's dad is doing to him.
Oh, I didn't really think of that actually. When I was reading the book, I'm not sure if you mentioned it explicitly in the book, but I always thought it was like Darius was like, oh, I like old things, or like I really like Star Trek, and kind of like asking his dad to like watch it with him, because he was always like, oh, this is like my dad and I, or like me and my dad, like this is our thing. And I always thought it was like, oh, I want to watch this with him, as opposed to like his dad being like, let's watch this together.
Oh yeah, I don't know that I ever explicitly said where the tradition came from, but I always imagined that it started when he was like way too young to even remember, and it has just like always been their thing.
Yeah,
that's cute.
Yeah, that's very cute.
Yes. If I ever do have kids, they're going to have to suffer through Star Trek with me, even the terrible first and second season of The Next Generation.
Yes, it'll be a home tradition.
Exactly.
Okay. The next question, the novel explores different expectations and manifestations of what masculinity can look like, which I really, really liked, and I liked how you explored it throughout the book. What do you hope your readers will take away as they read about the characters' different and changing views on masculinity?
Ooh, it's so weird because on the one hand, like I definitely want them to just come away thinking like me, which is an expansive, queer normative view of masculinity. But I also think maybe a lot deeper. I hope people will learn to expect more of themselves and of others, and embrace their emotions, and also decenter the Western view of masculinity, because that's something that Darius kind of comes face to face with and takes a while to get, is that there's just different rules for boys in Iran and in a lot of Southwest Asia than there are in the United States. And he has to learn how to navigate that. And, you know, Iran has its own problems, but Darius learns to kind of take the best of both worlds, which is also the name of an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So we're all full circle. But yeah, I really hope, I don't know, I feel like dismantling toxic masculinity is one of the things I'm very passionate about in most of my writing. And so I guess I just hope I did that a little bit. In some way, one way or another, I hope every reader takes away some nugget that helps them transform themselves and the world around them.
Yeah, we definitely think you did. I know a lot of our book club members, like this was one of the most prevalent questions like talked about in the book club chat, just how you really discuss this in detail and document it even throughout like the 3 generations of Darius's family, with his grandfather, his father, and even him. So I know we're jumping in terms of like heavy topics and then like lighthearted topics, but back to the lighthearted side, hopefully. We love how tea just continuously reappears as a motif in the book, and our book club members are really interested in knowing, what was the research process like for the different brewing methods? Was this something you just personally had an interest in, or did you have to dive deeper in terms of figuring out like the traditions? And on top of that, do you have a favorite tea?
Yeah, the research process for this was there really wasn't one. I have just been a hardcore tea drinker for most of my life. And in the before times, I would go to multiple tea festivals every year, and you would get to meet producers of tea or importers of tea and sample teas from all over the world. And so much the knowledge in Darius I just absorbed from all that, and then I just kind of picked my favorites to sprinkle in throughout the book. I haven't been to one since the pandemic, which is very sad, but hopefully maybe in 2021 I'll get back out there. And as far as favorite teas, I used to change every 6 months. Like I would go to a festival and come away with a new favorite tea. But lately I've been drinking a lot of Dragonwell and a lot of Phoenix Mountain Oolong and a lot of like single origin Ceylon teas. Those are kind of my three go-tos right now, since I'm just keep ordering them since I haven't been able to try anything new.
Dang.
I feel like you're so cultured and you know so much about tea. And meanwhile, I'm drinking like black tea or just like the basic teas.
You know what? I firmly believe that tea is meant to bring joy and community to us. And so it doesn't matter. You don't have to drink something fancy. You can put sugar or milk in it. You can put ice in it. As long as it makes you happy, that's what matters. And I am by no means a purist.
Mm. Listening to you talk about tea and also Star Trek and just like things that you clearly show a lot of passion and interest in makes me want to like be into tea and Star Trek. So like, after this live, I'm going to be Googling how to brew tea properly.
Oh, good. I do think that like proper brewing does increase the enjoyment of it, because if you get the water too hot or you steep it too long, it does in fact turn bitter and gross. Which is how the British drink it. I don't know if anyone has seen Ted Lasso, but when Ted Lasso, like every time he tastes tea, he's like, "This is a joke, right? You don't really drink this, right? It's garbage water." And I was like, to be fair, some British tea is like that because they just steep it to death.
And that's the tea.
That's the tea on tea.
We
Also, if you haven't
got,
seen Ted Lasso, I highly endorse it.
that also reminds me of, I don't know if you watched Avatar Last Airbender, but when Uncle Iroh's like, "This is just hot leaf water."
Uncle Iroh is my avatar in Avatar. Because I'm like, yes, I would also like to be a serene old man that just like gets a free ride on a boat around the world and sits and plays board games and makes my tea and then occasionally breathes fire.
We also got a comment from April talking about how she really loved the way tea was used to show the relationship between Darius and his grandfather when they were brewing it together.
Oh, so, thank you. That was a fun scene to write, especially because, Darius's grandfather is so prickly and Darius felt so alienated from him, and it was nice to write a moment of connection for them.
Yeah, I really like the way you like intertwined a lot of these like heavier topics with like more lighthearted fun stuff like tea and Star Trek. Another comment we got was the depiction on depression, which is a really big overarching theme of the book. So mental health and specifically the medication used for depression is really stigmatized in a lot of different cultures, and we really like the way a lot of book club readers really like the way you talked about it and explored it in depth with the way you showed Darius's story. Why did you choose such a straightforward way when dealing with both mental health for Darius and his father's mental health struggles, specifically when using medication? Specifically with using medication, and especially since it's still stigmatized in like Asian and Arab households.
Yeah, a lot of that just came from my own experience living with and growing up with major depressive disorder. I was really lucky in that. Lucky is a weird word to put it, but my mom's side of the family has like a long history of mental health problems. And so when I was young and started exhibiting signs of depression, my mom was like prepared to deal with it and, made it clear that therapy and medication were good ways of managing it. And so thankfully I grew up fairly well supported in that. But I also had a lot of friends, both white friends and non-white friends, who had parents who were like way less supportive. And it made me really sad and kind of mad for them. And so I really wanted to just show how just like so many other things in life, it's something that you live with and manage, and you're fine. Fine as relative, but like it's not the end of the world. And I say that particularly because when I started writing it in 2015, and I feel like in 2013, 2014, and early 2015, there were a bunch of books about mental health and mental illness that came out in the YA space that kind of sensationalized or even romanticized depression and suicide and suicidal ideation. And I felt that was kind of gross and dangerous, and it made me really, really angry. And so I was quite determined to put a different narrative on the page.
I also really appreciated how Darius, I think he also explored different types of medication to figure out what worked best for him, which I think is something you don't really think too much about. People just like, some people might not think too much about. And I love how it's just like, not necessarily a habit of him just like taking his medication, but it's just a part of him and part of who he is. And just seeing that normalized just felt really impactful for, like, I have family members with depression. We have some book club members who've had, like, they discuss it a lot. They just loved how it was depicted within the book.
Well, I'm really glad. The search for the right medication was directly pulled from my own experience, because I think it took about 3 years to get like the right combinations of medication for me. And I did go through a lot of really rough mood swings and stuff. Brain chemistry can be really exciting in a terrible way.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I landed in a healthy and good place, and I'm very grateful for that.
We love that for you.
Seriously.
Thank you.
I remember this specific scene when Darius's father goes into sharing about his own process of finding the proper medication, because in the beginning of the story, Darius thinks of his father as like some kind of like macho figure who has everything together, and like just assumed that he always had the right medication. And it was like really, really touching to find out, like to have that scene of like his father talking about his process of finding the proper medication. And it was just like super heartfelt.
Thank you. I'm glad. I think, I've experienced this in my family, and I've talked to a lot of other people with kind of any kind of generational health problems. And there is this kind of guilt that parents go through. And I think humans in general process guilt in really weird and sometimes unhealthy ways. And so it was a lot of, I don't want to say fun, it was very gratifying to unpack that and to bring Darius and his dad closer once they learned to communicate better.
Yeah.
Definitely. That kind of brings us to the next question, which is about the title of the book, which I think is really interesting, because the title of the book is Darius the Great is Not Okay. And when this kind of reminds, I think for Alexandra and I, we were thinking of like our younger days when we were like, all right, like not younger days, but those moments when you're like, oh, how are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm doing okay. And the story felt like a version of Darius the Great is becoming okay versus just like him not being okay all the time. So how do you define what it means to be okay or not okay? And how did that affect Darius and his relationship with his father, his family, and everyone around him? And did you were you in the process of, did you have any say in the process of naming the title?
Yeah. As far as the title, originally the book was just called Darius the Great. And then when we sold it, we were like, by the way, we have to change the title, because if people Google Darius the Great, they're just going to get the historical figure, not your book. And we want people to find the book. And so we brainstormed a lot of titles. And one of the ones I just kind of threw out there in like a brainstorm was Darius the Great is Not Okay. And my editor and my agent both really liked it and liked the tension in it. Kind of the opposite between great and okay, and how it kind of asked a question of why is he not okay? And so that's, it was kind of a mutual agreement that felt like the right title. And as far as kind of being okay or how we define it, I don't know that I have a good definition of okay. I just know that sometimes I feel like I'm okay and sometimes I feel like I'm not okay. And I feel like so many of us are expected in life to always be okay and to never admit when we're not. And so I think for me, it was really, I don't know that I think it was much about Darius becoming okay as it was learning with him as him learning that no one gets to be okay all the time, and that life is a series of being okay and being not okay, and hopefully you have people around you that love you and help you get through the not okay times and back to being okay. I think that's the best I can put it.
Yeah, just like it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, I definitely saw that as an underlying theme throughout the whole story, even though now we realize that you kind of brainstormed the title after you finished writing the book. But now that I know this, I'm like, wow, this title is very, very fitting, because in the beginning, Darius is very much like, oh, everyone around me seems to be so put together, like, why am I not? And feeling very lonely and alone in his like experiences. And then when he goes and when he like creates stronger relationships with his family and like with a really close friend, and like he learns that like, oh, they're like, not everyone is okay all the time, and that is okay. And so it's like very I don't know how to describe it, like wrapped up in a present. comes in a circle really nicely.
It was serendipity.
Yeah.
And I really think, especially, how Darius saw the world early on in the book, really gets to how kind of living with depression can make you an unreliable narrator of your own life. And so much of his perceptions were just colored by depression. And he wasn't always good about talking them out and understanding, what people really said and what people really thought. He just kind of went off of his versions of what he thought people were about.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of Sarab, religious and ethnic discrimination is something that both Darius and Sarab go through, and it helps create a complex picture of Iran and Iranians in general that isn't really shown in most media. Was it really difficult to build such a complex picture yet balance pictures of Iran, especially since Darius' story is marketed to primarily English speakers who never really visited Iran?
Yeah. My family is actually Baha'i, like Sohrab's family. I myself am not. I'm an atheist, but I have a lot of that discrimination in my family history. Most of my family left Iran as refugees. The family that does still live there has been harassed at times, imprisoned at times, and so I don't know. I feel like that's something I've just lived with all my life, of understanding that Iran is not a monolithic country. And so in a way, it was really easy to just kind of put parts of my own life on the page. And I would say I spent most of my writing time not so much caring about centering the white gaze, the white Western gaze. And I was really fortunate in that my editor is actually Lebanese American. And so she also had her own experience with being part of Diaspora. And so we were able to have really good conversations about topics like that. And we ended up kind of coming around to basically letting Darius lead the telling of his own story, because he is a child of Diaspora and he is biracial. There were always going to be some parts of Iran that were familiar to him that didn't need explaining. And there were always going to be some parts of it that were strange and that he was discovering and that he could linger on. And I think that ended up being a really good balance, in that it invited people unfamiliar with Iran into the story. And yet it didn't let them into the inner sanctum, because there are things in there that only Iranians pick up on, or just people from that part of the world in general, that resonate with them in a way that they don't with others. And I think that's really exciting in a way. Because not every part of every book has to be for every person. I think it's okay to be a little selfish sometimes and just put things in for you and your people.
That was a great answer. And I think for a lot of us, we know that politics doesn't play a huge part. Iranian politics wasn't a major plot point within the book, but just having it briefly discussed was really impactful to see. We also recently read The Stationery Shop, which is set in Tehran 2 months ago. So that kind of gave us a a good intro, and it was nice. It was like, oh, when we saw something pick up here, we were like, oh, we make the connection. We also got some comments, people talking about how they really love the difficulty, you showing the difficulty of learning Farsi and bringing the rep to it, as well as Lizzie talking about how she related to Darius not knowing how to express himself when he wants to talk with his family members, especially because of the cultural differences. And I think there was also another comment talking about how, like, as a character, they loved how he had such an amazing inner voice, wasn't able to communicate anything but him when asked, and was a really great, again, depiction of depression and anxiety.
Oh, thank you. It's funny, that kind of emerged organically as I was writing. I think when I was that age, I tended to talk too much because I was anxious about silences, and I think Darius is kind of the opposite, that he is, as much as he struggles, he's really comfortable with the silence, and so he's just like,
Yeah, I remember when Darius and Sarab's relationship were first developing and they were like first starting to be friends, he was like, oh, this is a person that is allowing me to like stay silent or like be comfortable in silence, which was like, he's like, oh, nobody has ever let me sit in this silence together, and he was like very comforted by that.
Yeah, I like that part.
Yeah.
I don't always know what I'm doing as a writer, but every so often something happens on the page and I was like, ooh, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
So moving a little bit away from research and themes into plot and characters, aside from our wonderful narrator, do you have a favorite character that you were writing, or did you have a character that was really challenging to write?
I really did. I think Darius's dad ended up being my favorite, because he loves his son so fiercely and he messes up so often and just wants to do his best. And I feel like, he does get there in the end, and that's something I want, I think, for everyone. I want for all my relationships in life, is that even when you mess up, there's grace to find your way back. And so, especially the older I get, I think the more I identify with parent-type characters. And so I really loved him. I also really loved Darius's grandmother, Mamu, who was very much inspired by my dad's sister, my Amme, who's just like a ball of sunshine and one of the best people I've ever met in the universe. So I always loved getting to write about her and her just kind of bottomless well of love for her family. That always made me happy. As far as challenging, I don't know. I feel like a lot of it just kind of flowed organically in a way that has not happened to me with other books, so I've had to work really hard on making good characters. So I think in a way I just kind of lucked out on this one. But I'm still paying for all that karma now, because everything else I write is really, really hard.
Yeah, as a very character-driven reader, this book was very, yes, because I loved all the characters, I loved all the complexities, even characters that you typically think like, oh, I would not like them because they're the antagonist, which in this case, personally, when I was reading it, felt like Darius's dad, because Darius is like, oh, I have a strange relationship with my father. But like, even as I was reading it, I was like, no, there's more to this, instead of just like naming like, oh, this person's bad or this person's good.
Yeah, it was funny, when I was like in high school English and we would have to analyze books, and I was like, oh, the antagonist is always the one stopping the character from getting what they want. And it was really weird writing Darius, because then like Darius is the one most often stopping Darius from getting what Darius wants.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, that felt very true to a lot of my life, that sometimes we are the ones that are standing in our own way. And so I was like, yes, I'm just going to do this. And anyone who has to read this book in their English class is just going to have to suffer along with me that it doesn't fit into any of the neat boxes we get told about writing.
No, I would have loved to read this in my English class.
Me too.
I'm always excited when I do hear about a school that's using it, because I'm like, yes, someday kids will hate me the way I hate John Knowles. And that's great. I hate John Knowles. I hate A Separate Peace so much. And it just makes me so mad.
I mean, like, When you say Darius is his own worst enemy, I feel like this is also true for in real life, because oftentimes, like, unfortunately, you are also your own worst enemy for many things, and so it feels like so almost a little too real. You're like, this is way too
This is a self call out.
Yeah.
And it absolutely was a self call out for me, because yes, I'm just a little bit of a disaster sometimes.
We talked about this a little bit earlier with the whole diaspora identity, but then Darius describes himself as like a fractional Persian and a mixed identity, about like which he has a lot of mixed and different feelings. Do you find yourself incorporating your own experiences about diaspora identity into the story?
I definitely pulled a lot from my own life. It's really interesting talking to other like biracial kids or like bicultural kids, and the feelings, you know, everyone has different feelings about it. Some people feel like they're half and half, and some people feel like they're whole and whole, and some people feel like they're none and none. And I feel like I've felt all those ways at different times in my life. So I did put a lot of kind of my own experiences in there. I also read a really great book called The Limits of Whiteness by Neda Maghbouleh, who is an Iranian scholar that was basically studying the relationship of Iranian identity to white Western identity, and the ways that at times we have been more or less white adjacent, and kind of the way we think about ourselves and whiteness versus the way that white people think about us and whiteness. And like there's lots of Iranians in my life that are like, oh yeah, we're white. But if you had asked any of the white kids in my school after September 11th, because I was in high school when that happened, they definitely didn't see me as white, even though they didn't read the news and know that no Iranians were involved in it. You know, I was some flavor of brownish, and that was enough. And so that book in particular really informed a lot of my kind of explorations about racial identity in the book. Sorry, that got really heavy.
No, this is what we're here for. Not that like we're here for heavy stuff, but
yeah, a lot of our books, and our past books for our book club, we talk a lot about like diaspora identity and like the whole. I think you described it really well, of like full and half and like none and none, because it's kind of like that feeling of like when I'm in America or like in a white centered place, that I'm like, I'm not white enough or not American enough or not whatever enough. And then when I go to like my so-called home country, I am like too American or like too othered. And so it's like that feeling of like being very displaced no matter where you are, and there's no home. And so I feel like it's very cool that some people, and at some points in their life, they are able to feel like full in both of their identities. But I also do feel like it can be really hard at times, especially like when you were talking about your own experiences, specifically after 9/11, which I cannot even imagine.
It's definitely rough. And I think one of the things I have learned from putting this book out into the world is how, you know, children of diaspora kind of make their own community. You know, we may not always feel welcome in America, and we may not always feel welcome in like our ancestral origin countries, but when we're with each other, we all kind of know the same feelings, and that makes us a really excellent community in and of itself.
And that's why Subtle Asian Book Club exists. As a self-plug. But yeah, I think that's definitely one of the reasons like why we just love reading these types of books, and why so many of our book club members can relate to, especially writings like yours. So sorry to move us to the next question, but Darius also explores relationships with his family and his parents, and it plays like a very large part within the book. Why did you decide for Darius's father to play a more passive role when it came to the racism Darius particularly faces at school?
I feel like since Darius's dad is white, he's just always going to have a harder time understanding what his son is going through. And I think, you know, something a lot of parents of mixed race kids go through is kind of a little bit of a denial, because like no parent wants their kids to be going through something like that. And if you don't know how to deal with something, sometimes the easiest psychological thing to do is to just pretend it doesn't exist. And I think that's, a coping mechanism that Darius's dad has unfortunately fallen back on at times without realizing he's doing it. And I don't know, that felt honest. But it's also something that he, listens to Darius and works on doing better, which I think at the end of the day is the most important thing, is listen and learn and do better.
Yeah, I definitely saw that towards the end of the book when he is more patient, more compassionate, and like more forgiving of Darius. And then in the beginning, at least from Darius's perspective, he was like, oh, my dad is like more strict, more rigid, because from the dad's perspective, he like wants the best for Darius, but then like from Darius's perspective, he's like, this is not working for me. And then I liked how you mentioned that like a big contributing factor is that because Darius's dad is white, and like a lot of times, even though like there are many white people out there who try to be like more open-minded, more helpful for like POC and like immigrant experiences, but then like they still have to like actively try their best. And like it's like, yes, you can try your best, but then also like trying your best in like a way that is more helpful for those who are like experiencing things like racism or whatever.
Yeah, learning to decenter yourself is a skill that takes a lot of practice. Yeah. And it's something that I don't think you ever become an expert at. I think you just do a little bit better each time. Yeah. And it's something that, I have to constantly relearn as a sometimes white passing cisgender male, that we all have to do that at times, because there are always going to be times when we're the ones with all the power in the room, and we have to recognize that and let go of it. I also think especially, it's something that I had in all of my, in the back of my mind as I was writing, but I never kind of really made its way into the book. But, Darius's parents were pretty young when they had him, and like parenting doesn't come with a manual. And so poor Darius, as the older child, is also just getting, he's the guinea pig for parenting styles. And, so he has to also deal with his parents just not always knowing what to do, and throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah, that is very true, because as I am slowly getting older, approaching my mid-20s, and I see some people I know who are like having children at around my age, I'm just like, I am a child and you're having
right, babies having babies.
What? And then I'm thinking of like people who I know who are like in their mid-30s or something, and their kids are like 10, and I'm like, that means you had your child when you were like my age. So children everywhere. We don't know what we're doing, but we're just trying our best. And so like because of that, now whenever I think of like my parents or like people who are parents, I'm just like definitely more compassionate, definitely more understanding of like nobody knows what they're doing, but it's okay. But definitely when I was like a teenager and when I was growing up, I was like, my parents know everything, like listen to adults, because that is what you're supposed to do when you're a kid. But like now I'm like, no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things any adult can do around children, whether it's their own children or just children you happen to meet, is A, be willing to say you're sorry and admit when you're wrong, and B, always acknowledge that the child is also a like full and complete human worthy of respect, even if they have less life experience or their brain isn't fully developed yet. They still deserve respect and compassion. Yeah. And I feel like I've seen a little bit of a shift, like in the time from when I was a kid to growing up now. Like my generation of parents is doing just a little bit better on that front. So I don't know. I think there's hope for the future sometimes. And then sometimes I, read the news about wildfires and I was like, oh, that's right. The planet is a self-cleaning oven and we're all going to burn. Sorry, that got really, really heavy. I'm
No, I feel
really
the
anxious
same
about.
way.
I'm really anxious about climate change.
Yeah, very relatable. We were like, wow, there's so much hope, and then like we're all gonna die. The world is
Right?
literally on fire.
Right.
Also, Alexandra lives like near the mountains-ish within
so
California. So I
you've
feel like she's
seen-
constantly getting evacuated for wildfires.
I'm so sorry. I love California so much. It's so beautiful. I love visiting. And I'm also, I don't think I could live there. I think I would be a nervous wreck.
Yeah, I
Also,
do
the
not.
traffic is terrible.
Yeah, traffic is terrible. I do not exaggerate when I say it is a dumpster fire. Like literally dumpster fire. There's trash everywhere, and also everything's on fire all the time.
Truly. But also you got the ocean and the mountains, and like those are two of my favorite things.
Yeah, there's a unfortunate price to pay, but hopefully we are getting better. We're moving towards a more positive, sustainable trajectory.
I hope so. I hope we keep pushing in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we are trying our best and we're trying to be better and continuously try to go towards a better direction, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But we talked about diaspora and we talked about Farsi and we talked about all this stuff before, but our final question, we're coming back to it. Many diaspora children find it hard to both learn and connect with their mother tongues. Why was it important for you to show the advantages that came to Laleh as she spoke Farsi versus Darius' objectively much harder journey towards connecting with his grandparents due to the language barrier?
I think a lot of that came from my own experiences with very, very poor Farsi. I think about like the conversations I had with my dad and with my family about kind of why we never learned. And I think there is, especially in immigrant parents, you have to navigate how much you want to assimilate, how much you want your kids to assimilate, and your feelings about it can change over time. And, my dad has said that, if I had it to do again, I definitely would have made sure that me and my sister learned Farsi. But, we were both born in the 80s and the hostage crisis was not that long ago in a lot of people's memories. And, he wanted us to just be American and not be isolated from our classmates. And I think something that we all learn as we grow is you really can't protect people from who they are. Because just because me and my sister didn't speak Farsi didn't mean that we were not Iranian and we're not going to be perceived as Iranian by our classmates and by society. And so you just kind of learn to arm yourself with knowledge and with love as best you can. And so yeah, I think I just put a lot of my own feelings about it into Darius and his family. Yeah. I feel like that was a really circuitous answer that maybe didn't ever get anywhere, but I'm going to stop talking now, and that means the answer is done.
No, it was really good.
Whenever you talk, you're like, oh, yes, makes so much sense. Yes.
Yeah. All I could do was like nod vigorously and be like, you got it, you got it.
Very good. It's all made up. I don't know anything about anything ever.
I thought you did a really, really good job in the book and also explaining it just now, because I feel like oftentimes whenever I see like immigrant families or immigrants' parents in general, they are either like the two extremes of like, you have to speak this like mother tongue language at home or else we are going to disown you, or you have to speak English or we're not going to teach you our mother tongue so you can like try to be more American in a way to like protect your child. And so it's like very like two-way. And I guess like it was really cool to see that for Darius, like his parents like tried it one way, and then like for Laleh it was like almost a different way. Of course, it's like not as extreme, but like it was like the like, oh, this and that.
Yeah, I think Darius's mom definitely realized that she didn't want her kids to not know her language, and so did try to course correct. But so much of language is like picked up when you're super young.
Yeah.
That it was too late. And it's really interesting that like as I see my cousins having kids now, most of them are like speaking Farsi to their kids, and then their kids talk back to them in English, but like the understanding is still there. And I think that's really exciting because that means as they grow older, if they decide they want to like speak it or like learn to read and write it, they're already going to have a foundation. And I think that's, I don't know, I feel like I'm seeing more and more kind of immigrant and diaspora families come at it in that way, which I think is really exciting. And I don't want to say gentle, but it's, you know, it's a way that doesn't like feel like you're shoving it down the kids' throats, and you're giving kids some agency, which I think is really important. Agency is very important because I remember being a kid and always just refusing to do anything that I got forced into doing, like piano lessons.
Oh my God, yes. 100%.
Like, I resent any time I'm forced to do the thing.
Yeah, I definitely also agree. I think my mom and my grandma would used to talk about me in Taiwanese, and then I picked it up, so now I can't. I picked it up so I know how to understand it, but I can't really speak it. But now, as I'm trying to relearn the language, having that foundation, even though most of it was just like them gossiping about me, it's been a lot easier to like pick up a lot of the words.
Right. I mean, there's lots of research showing that literally like your brain wiring is like altered by what sounds you hear when you're like 0 to 2 years old. And there are certain like tonalities or sounds that if you don't learn them when you're like less than 2 years old, your brain is just never going to quite understand what that sound is. It just becomes unable to differentiate it because it never learned. And so, yeah, I think it's, I don't know, it's really, I'm fascinated by language. And as someone who keeps picking new ones to learn badly, it's really fun, but also really frustrating that I just didn't learn 12 languages while I was a baby, so that I can speak them all now.
I feel that so much. And I think like the whole agency that you said really resonates, because from what I see for a lot of children, at least when I was younger, it was a lot of like rejecting of the language of like, oh, I don't want to learn this because my parents are forcing me to learn it. And a lot of my friends, as we were all getting older, were like, wait, I kind of want to learn how to speak and read and write in my mother tongue, because language plays a really big contributing factor of understanding your own culture and of understanding your identity, of like going back to your own history and roots and being able to like communicate properly. So yeah.
Truly. But yeah, but I also think it's exciting that, you know, even though it's hard, it's never like too late. And so
that's true. That's so true.
Connecting. That's why I've loved Duolingo so much, even though there's no Farsi course yet. Hopefully one day there will be. Meanwhile, I'm just going to keep learning Italian.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
So those are most of our questions about the book itself, but we have more questions for you.
Oh.
So is there anything you're working on right now? And also we know that Darius the Great has like a sequel. A lot of people already said they're picking it up, but do you want to talk a little bit about what it is for those of us who may not know and are trying to figure out what this story might entail?
Sure. So Darius the Great Deserves Better is about Darius in his junior year of high school, and he's back home in Portland. He's gotten more confident. He's dating a boy named Landon. He is on the soccer team at his school. He's interning at his favorite tea shop. And he's kind of gotten all the things that he wanted, but his family is still recovering financially from a trip overseas. So his parents are working a lot of overtime and stressed. His dad is kind of dealing with a depressive episode. And to help out with the family, his dad's mothers have come to help with the kids. And Darius doesn't get along so well with them. And he's kind of learning that even though he has all the things that he said he wanted, they're not necessarily fulfilling to him, and he has to kind of learn how to kind of embrace his own agency and learn that it's okay to change your mind about what you want and about what's good for you. And it's filled with lots more tea and Star Trek and Iranian food, but now with even more gayness. And the paperback comes out next month. So if you like paperbacks, if you wait like a month, then you'll be able to get it.
Perfect timing.
Yes.
Excellent.
I will be reading.
Excellent. And then as far as what I'm working on right now, my next YA is called Kiss and Tell, and it comes out in March. We revealed the cover at the end of June. It's about a boy named Hunter. He is the only gay member of a Canadian boy band. And he kind of has this public image of like the squeaky clean, cute gay boy. He's been in a like relationship for as long as he's been in the public eye. But that relationship implodes right before the band goes on their like second big tour. And so he has to kind of grapple with how to be queer in the public eye and the pressures of fame and success. And also a rebound romance with an Iranian boy named Kayvon, who's basically Iranian Nick Jonas from an Iranian version of the Jonas Brothers. And I'm still working on like a really concise pitch for it. Usually I would like go to ask listen to librarians talk about my book, and I would like steal what they describe my book as, because librarians are so good at like a one-sentence description of a book. So I haven't heard any librarians tell me what my book is about yet, so you get the rambly version. But I'm really, really proud of it. It's full of like fake BuzzFeed quizzes and think pieces and little snatches of lyrics from the band, from Hunter's notebook. And I'm really, really proud of it. It was really, really hard to write, both because I think I bit off more than I could chew, and also because writing during the pandemic was really hard. But it did finally come together, and I think it's the best book I've written. And then I'm working on a couple other things, but they're all like unannounced. But I'm I'm excited to eventually get to announce them. All of them involve Iranians in some way or another. So I think I can't imagine not writing a book where there are not Iranians in prominent roles, either as main characters or love interests or best friends or something.
It sounds so good. The more you kept talking, you're like, I don't have short pitches. Like, no, the long pitch works. The long pitch works.
It's like mic drop after mic drop after mic drop.
Did you have a boy band?
People like it.
Did you have a boy band inspiration for your fictional boy band?
One Direction was definitely the one that was foremost on my mind. I don't know, they're fun, and they were never sleazy in the way that like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC kind of felt to me, which is weird because like they were the boy bands when I was a teenager, and as I was kind of coming to understand my own queerness, like they were the ones that like everyone was like, oh, they're so cute. But I don't know, for some reason they just always seemed like they should go like take a shower or something. And maybe that was like the 90s, early 2000s aesthetic, that like bad hair, bad outfits, everything. I don't know, but as a grown adult, I just really like the chaotic energy of One Direction and how fun their music was. And I don't know. I just really like them.
I hope we get
in a non-creepy way. I think they're fun.
They are fun.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of it ended up also being inspired by Pink Floyd's The Wall, which is an album from before I was born. But it's about a rock star who like becomes isolated and basically builds like a psychological wall to prevent himself from getting hurt by the people in his life, only to have it all come crumbling down, spoiler alert, as he realizes that it's unhealthy and impossible to wall yourself up from feeling things. And being isolated in the pandemic, I definitely found myself gravitating to that at times for kind of some of the heavier parts.
We cannot wait to read it.
I'm really excited.
Is there a projected release date already?
March 22nd, 2022. Which is just a lot of twos in a row. It's also the day right after Nowruz, which is a very like happy Nowruz to me.
Yay! That's so exciting. This is a final.
Oh.
That's not true. We have a speed round of like fun
questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
After this question.
I was like, this is not a final question, but it is a final, like maybe a little bit longer question. Then we have some fun questions. It should be a little bit faster, but you can go into it if you want to. But what do you hope for your readers to get out of your stories, and do you have any last messages for your readers?
I always hope that any reader takes away from my stories whatever it is that they need. And whether that's affirmation, that they are good enough just as they are, whether it's, a warm hug, or whether it's just someone agreeing with them that, yeah, sometimes life sucks. I just hope they feel seen and understood and loved from reading my books. And as far like any message, the message I always hope people take away is be gay, do crimes. I feel like that's, I don't know. I'm not really a message person. I always just, in a way, I do think I'm a very selfish writer because I just write the stories that I want. And sometimes they're the stories that I wish I had when I was younger, and sometimes they're the stories that I wish I had now. And then I get lucky, and sometimes other people also want or need those stories. But yeah, I really feel like once the book is out there, it really belongs to its readers. And so like the message is whatever they want it to be. But also be gay, do crimes.
I think a lot of people definitely like felt something while reading this book. And that something just differs on each person.
Oh, good.
So we kept saying last question, but this is like the fun last speed round of questions. So very quickly, do you want to talk about your most anticipated 2021 release, or maybe your favorite 2021 release so far?
Oh my gosh. I'm so like, calendar is really weird for me because like some of the stuff I'm reading right now doesn't come out until next year. I will say, oh, I do know what one of my most anticipated books is the sequel to Aristotle and Dante, Discover the Secrets of the Universe. Which I think I'm getting an early copy. I think I put it out into the universe, and I think I manifested one that might arrive next week. So fingers crossed. I'm trying to think what else like came out this year. Oh, one of my very best friends, Lana Wood Johnson, put out Speak for Yourself this year, but I read it last year to blurb it. And so I like always forget like what year did it come out? When did it come out? And then like I'm really excited for Julian Winter's next book, but I think that's actually that's 2022. It comes out the week before mine. But I'm probably going to get to read this year if I beg hard enough. So it's like time is weird. I also I'm obsessed with the Murderbot Diaries, and I did love the Murderbot novella from this year, and I felt very excited that we got one in 2021 because 2021 has been rough in its own ways. Not as bad as 2020, but still challenging. I think so. Those are some of my favorite and or anticipated things right now.
We will keep an eye out.
I'm very, very, very excited. I was lucky enough to receive the Ari Dante sequel, so I'm like,
I'm so excited and jealous.
You soon. You said hopefully in about a week.
Fingers crossed.
I believe in it. What is a book that you would recommend to everyone? I know, hard question.
It is hard. I love How to Be Remy Cameron. It's one of my favorite books on identity and growing up. And I just love everything Julian Winters writes. So that's definitely one of my favorites.
And our final question, and someone also talked about, I think Lizzie also asked it, what are some of your favorite Iranian foods or stories about cooking? And also, do you have a favorite food in general?
One of my favorite Iranian food is definitely cello kebab, especially because it's like it's a production and it's a treat because you have to like get the grill out and you have to do a lot of prepping. I also love qotab, the little almond pastries, because again they're a lot of work. I think many of my favorite Iranian foods are the ones that take the most work because I get them so infrequently. And yeah, and also because there's lots of like family memories associated with, sitting at a table helping my aunt fold the pastries and seal them and occasionally mess up and then they explode in the fryer or in the oven. Or, sitting, gathering around the grill while the kebabs cook. Being excited when the taddy comes out just right, or fighting over different pieces of it because everyone wants it. So yeah, I think, food is very entwined with memory of my family for me. And I did end up putting most of my favorites into the book, either the first book or the second book. I just put them in because I was like, I like this, and so this is what I'm going to write about. As far as favorite food in general, one of my like go-to comfort foods is pho. There's a really good Vietnamese restaurant in Kansas City. Actually, I don't know, we just got really, really lucky. We have a really thriving Vietnamese immigrant community here. And it's like the best Vietnamese food I've ever had has been here in Kansas City, actually, even better than like Vancouver or Seattle. or California, where there's also like large immigrant populations. But I don't know, somehow we just got like a grade A cook here. It warms me and it makes me happy and content. I also really love pasta. I like, one of my quarantine hobbies was learning how to make fresh pasta, and I got the hand cranking pasta roller and everything.
Are you a red sauce or white sauce person?
Yes.
Both.
All of the above, and green too. I love pesto. But yeah, so I learned how to make fresh pasta over the quarantine, and that was really fun.
Wow, I'm so hungry now.
Oh my gosh, I know, right? Also cheese, just in general, cheese is another favorite.
Yeah.
And cheese requires very little preparation. You can just go and eat it like an apple if you want.
Yes.
Or a candy bar. Just gnaw off a piece of cheddar, it's fine.
Yeah, reading this book definitely made me very, very, very hungry, and I was like, time to go to the nearest Iranian restaurant and get all the good food.
Thankfully, you have so many in Los Angeles. I'm so jealous. The last good one in Kansas City closed several years ago.
Oh no!
So now I basically have to cook for myself. Or there is one place that's like 30-minute drive, and it's just okay. So I mostly just cook it for myself, or wait until I can visit my family.
Fingers crossed, you can get good food soon.
Indeed. Yeah, or when I visit Los Angeles and can go to Westwood.
Yes. Oh.
So those are all the questions we had prepared. We had a really wonderful time speaking with you. You just spouted off so many words of wisdom and got us so hungry. So fantastic book, fantastic time. Thank you.
I had a lovely time. It's really, it really fills my heart when I get to talk to other diaspora kids and, you know, people who really get what the book is about, and people who the book is for. So I really appreciate you inviting me to do this and getting to talk with you.
Yeah, we're so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It was truly an honor.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone in the audience.
Yay.
Our August book of the month is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, and we also recently announced today we're doing a summer bingo challenge. So if you want to get more reading in this summer, and one of the prompts is actually reread a favorite book or reread an SABC pick. So if you feel like rereading Darius the Great, you know, you can do that too. And you should also keep an eye out for the sequel. It's already out. The paperback will be coming out next month, as you said before. So we hope to see you again next time.
Yay! Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.